Every NFL team has one main mission: win the Super Bowl. But for some teams, it won't be this year, it might not even be next year, but it might be a few years away until they're actual contenders. So in today's video, I want to give you guys my best prediction as to when every single NFL team might become legitimate contenders. Subscribe and like the video if you guys do go on to enjoy. Let's hop into it. So as you guys can see, I have a tier list made for you guys, and we have every single year, including this year, next year, 2027, 28, 29, 30, and then beyond 2030. I'm gonna be going through every single one of these teams and letting you guys know when I think these teams will become serious Super Bowl contenders. With that said, we are going to begin with a tricky one here in the New Orleans Saints. Clearly, they're not contending for a title this year. They're probably not going to be contending for a title next year or possibly even the year after that. I realistically think they might be able to start getting into contention around 2028, assuming they knock out and have really good off seasons. But to play it safe, I'll say 2029 for the New Orleans Saints. I think this team has a long way to go until they can get to that spot. You know what? Actually, in fact, I'm going to go down to 2030 because when you look at this team, they have so many different holes they need to fill. And while there are some young pieces to really like on this team, they're realistically going to need a couple years to get to that point where they can become contenders. Sure, a rookie quarterback could head into the New Orleans Saints in 2027 and ends up being, the next GOAT, and that turns them into a playoff contender immediately. That's possible, but Super Bowl contender, I feel like it's a bit more realistic to say. Probably around that 2029, 2030 mark is when Saints fans can realistically expect to be a really, really good football team, assuming they start to hit on their picks. Next up, we got the Miami Dolphins. Obviously not this year. I think it's pretty safe to say that next year is not going to be the year either. 2027, you're probably going to have a new quarterback. Will it be a rookie? Will it be a vet? I'm not sure. Maybe even a new head coach. I think it's probably more realistic to say around 2029, maybe even 2030, because when you look at this roster, it's going to need a little bit of some overhaul, but there are some pieces to work with already on the team that you feel okay about. Like, of course, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, Kenneth Grant, some of the guys on the defensive line. There's some pieces in Miami to work with, but they are obviously going to have to get potentially a new quarterback, potentially a new head coach. So obviously, I can't put them in a contender until realistically around 2029, when that head coach and quarterback, if it's not Tua and McDaniel, it probably will be somebody else, can step in and start to play a little bit better. I think 2029 is about really kind of in between this range where you can start to see Miami maybe start to piece some things together. Next up, I got Baltimore. And obviously this year you could call them Super Bowl contenders, but I don't think they are this year. I think they have too many holes and issues, which makes me kind of cautious about the 2026 season and even a bit about 2027. I'm going to put them probably in 2026 because when you have Lamar Jackson, you probably have at least 1 or 2 more years with Derrick Henry. You have enough pieces to work with on this offense and defense. I think they're going to fix up some of the holes this offseason, get a little bit more healthy, and maybe potentially return back to form next year to maybe make a deeper playoff run or a better playoff push. Again, they could hypothetically get into the conversation this year, but it just feels a bit far-fetched. So I'm going to go with 2026, so next year. Next up, this is a really interesting one, the Cincinnati Bengals. Obviously this year, they're still in the running to make the playoffs, which is crazy to think about, but realistically speaking, more than likely, probably not. I don't think next year is going to be the case either because this defense is just not good enough to win a championship. So with that said, I think this offseason, they shore up the offensive line. Maybe they add a piece or two on defense. I don't think next year they're going to be contenders. I think they'll yet again be around an 8 to 10 win team. Maybe make the playoffs, maybe not. But Super Bowl contender, probably not. So I'm going to go with 2027 for the Cincinnati Bengals. Assuming they can keep Higgins, Burrow, and Chase 100% healthy, you revamp the offensive line this offseason and potentially the one after, and then you start to add some pieces defensively. With how good that offense is, they can overcome a subpar defense. And if Cincinnati can just have the 15th ranked defense in football, the 16th, the 17th, they can turn themselves into contenders if they can stay healthy. So I'll say 2027 for the Bengals. All right, the Denver Broncos, I'm going to put them right here in 2025. This team is one of the best teams in football right now. Yes, they had a bit of a scare from the Washington Commanders, and I know they haven't really been prettiest and sexiest of teams, but they have a championship caliber defense, and that offense, when they're rolling, can score points. They have some big time wins on their resume. They're the #1 seed in the AFC. I think it's either them or New England, one of the two, and they have a really good shot of making a deep playoff run with how open the AFC is. So I'm going to put the Broncos in 2025. Next one, the New York Giants. A bit of an interesting case here compared to these other teams because there's some young young pieces to really like about this team. You think you have your quarterback in Jackson Dart, you have your running back in Scatterbo and Tyrone Tracy, you have Malik Neighbors, you have some pieces on the offensive line you're feeling okay about. Still think that interior needs a bit of work, but you have some guys there. And defensively, you have a good front four. Maybe you need a linebacker. Maybe you need some help in the secondary. I think those are major needs for this team. However, that's not a lot of needs on this roster in terms of like massive ones. And they have some assets and some money to spend this year. So obviously, it's not going to be the case this year. I don't think next year is a really realistic one either, just because you're going to have to bring in probably a new head coach and they're going to have to get adjusted. And I think there's still some holes they got to figure out. But I think 2027, like if New York can really nail the head coaching position, continue the development of Jackson Dart, continue to make this team a more filled out roster on the back end, on the defensive side of things, then I think the Giants genuinely have a chance to be a really good football team in a few years. I'm gonna put them in I'll put them in 2028 just to be, I think what'll be the case, this is just a broad prediction here. This year, they're gonna be in the contention for the top pick. I think next year, they're gonna be about a 7 to 8 win team. I think 2027, they get into the playoffs. And then I think 2028, that's when you're looking at this team being a potential championship contender. Next up, the Minnesota Vikings. This is a tough one. This is one of the toughest ones, to be honest with you, because roster-wise, it's a good enough roster to be a championship contender. But with the quarterback position, that really limits this football team. This year, obviously, is not going to be the year because J.J. McCarthy just is not that guy, unfortunately, at least not this year. And I also don't think next year is going to be the case either, because really what you're looking at is next year, they're going to have to figure out that quarterback position. Maybe it's a Mac Jones. Maybe it's a Daniel Jones. Maybe it's J.J. McCarthy again, or they draft a quarterback. I just don't know if that's going to be enough to get them into Super Bowl contention. However, I think 2027, if they can figure out who their long-term answer is at quarterback, they get more time with Kevin O'Connell. The offense is stacked with talent. The defense is stacked with talent. Assuming they can continue to build this roster and get a little bit better, I think 2027 is about the time where this team should be getting back to where they were last year, where for a period of time they were a top contending team, but of course they flowed out in the playoffs. I think that they can get back to around that range, around this level. So I'll say 2027 for the Vikings. LA Rams, pretty simple. They're one of the biggest contenders in the NFC this year. I still think, even though they did lose to Carolina, I still think they're the best team in the NFL this year. We'll see what it looks like in the playoffs, but they have a recipe that's working, and I think they have a chance to get it all this year. Tampa Bay, I just feel like they're way too injured to be contenders this year. Now, they are getting a little bit more healthy, and I think they're going to really start to play better once they get into the playoffs. It just feels like they are a few pieces away defensively, mainly like a really legit pass rush away and some help in the linebacking core to get there, and just overall health. I think next year is where you're going to see Tampa Bay maybe make a bigger push, right? You have your quarterback, you have Bucky Irving, you have some good receivers, one healthy, you got a good offensive line. So offensively, you're feeling set on that side. Defensively, I think they're going to try and add some pass rush juice this offseason, maybe like a David Bailey, Cassius Howell, or Mason Thomas, one of those sort of guys, and just get some pass rush juice on this defense and get this defense to get after the quarterback a little bit more, which I think will make that defense a whole lot better. So I'll put them at more in 2026 right here. The Detroit Lions, man, this team feels like they're a little bit cursed because right as they're getting really good at football, both their coordinators leave and the defense just simply put cannot stay healthy. Man, I want to put them in contenders this year, but it just feels kind of unlikely at this point. Like, it feels like the injuries on the back end, the coaching staff overhaul, like all that sort of stuff that we were worried about might cause them to not be championship contenders this year. Maybe playoff threats, and you know, they're a team that nobody wants to face, but I don't really see the Lions contending for a title this year. But next year they'll be right there. They're a really loaded roster. I think they will figure out what issues plagued them this year, and next year they'll fill in those holes. They bring in some new coaches, and they'll be right in the thick of things next year. Next up, the Chicago Bears. I know Bears fans are riding the high after the Philadelphia Eagles game, and shout out to you guys. That was an awesome matchup. You guys dominated the Philadelphia Eagles. Big time win. Realistically speaking, I don't think this team is good enough to win a championship this year, and I would hope that Bears fans would agree with me on that one, that they are a good football team that's going to make the playoffs. And shoot, you get in the playoffs, you never freaking know, right? You never know. But if I'm putting money on it, I'm probably not taking the Bears to beat the Rams, Seattle, or some of these other top contenders. I think they could beat Philadelphia again. I mean, shit, they did it once. I think they can do it twice. We'll see. I'll put them in 2026. I think that's when you're going to see the Bears team take an even bigger step, because you look at this offense, Caleb Williams is getting more comfortable. I expect the offense to be nothing but better next year. I mean, this offense is already really good. The run game's been incredible. Caleb has been good. I expect it to be even better next year. But I'm also hoping this defense can mainly stay healthy, but also add a few things on that defensive line, right? Some run stuffing help, another pass rusher, things of that nature. And that'll then turn the Chicago Bears into a really fun playoff team that maybe wins a game or two, into becoming like legit contenders. And I think Chicago's right there. So I think next year is the big year for Chicago to take that next step. Next up, San Francisco. Could they win it this year? Maybe. The injuries on the defense, I think, are really going to really hurt their season. But they have some pieces on the offense to be good. And I mean, if they make the playoffs, they have a chance. I kind of feel like if this team's going to make that playoff run, it might be next year. But again, it's just going to be the question of Christian McCaffrey. I'm going to put San Francisco right here. I just can't see them winning it all this year with Fred Warner and Nick Bosa not on this team. Like, that feels pretty unlikely. I think the Rams will have their number. I think Seattle could beat them. Yes, I know San Francisco can beat those teams too, but in playoff crunch time, I would take LA, Seattle, possibly even Green Bay, and a few other teams over San Francisco. Still, though, San Francisco, they're having a hell of a year. But I think next year, if they can get healthy, add a few pieces on the offensive line, shore up this defense, San Francisco could be right back in the thick of things next year, trying to make a deep playoff run. Philadelphia, I'm gonna have to put them in 2026. I think this offense is not good enough to win a championship this year. I think defensively they are good enough, but that offense, unless they have a magical turnaround, which, as we know, in 2023 did not happen, I don't think it's gonna happen this year. I don't think there's a guy in that building that can take over play calling duties and all of a sudden just make things work, right? I don't think Nick Sirianni can do it. I don't think it's Kevin Patullo. You need somebody else to step in next year, a Kellen Moore type guy, a Shane Steichen type guy, take over the play calling, fix up this offense. I don't think it happens this year. They're still very talented. They still have a great defense, and that offense, they can create some explosive plays because they have A.J. Brown and Saquon Barkley, but they're not a complete football team. They cannot put together 4-quarter games on the offense. I don't think they can win a championship this year, which is crazy to think about, but I don't think they can. So I'll put them in 2026. I think they get a new OC this offseason, and I think they maybe add a few pieces defensively, and they'll be really, really, really good next year. Green Bay, Green Bay's been such a frustrating team. I'm going to have to put them in contending this year because they have a recipe for success, and, they have a really good defense and an offense that can score a lot of points. And when I look at the landscape of the NFC, do I think the Packers could beat the Rams? Probably not. I don't think they can beat Seattle either, or, I think they could beat, obviously they beat the Lions. I think they could beat the Bucks. I think they could beat Niners and Eagles. So because I think they can beat some of these teams right here that are all in the NFC, I'll put Green Bay here. And shoot, a lucky game goes their way. I shouldn't say lucky, but a game against LA that goes their way, Green Bay's right there. So I'll put them in contending this year, and they're also contending next year as well. Next up, the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm going to go full screen real quick. I did a mock draft for the Las Vegas Raiders, and I didn't take a quarterback. Check out the mock draft, 2-round mock draft. It's awesome. Go check it out. And I didn't take a quarterback. And I got like 3 or 4 or 5. It felt like a billion comments. It wasn't that many. It was a couple of Raiders fans just like, why didn't you draft a quarterback? Why didn't you? Guys, the Raiders don't need to get a quarterback this year. They have issues in receiving core, offensive line, cornerback, linebacker, interior defensive line, head coach. This whole team cannot spend a first-round pick on a quarterback this year. I mean, they could, but I think it'd be a terrible decision. Because you're telling me you're going to throw Fernando Mendoza out there, and he's going to have a shitty offensive line, Brock Bowers, Ashton Genty, and fuck all on defense. What do you think he's going to do in his rookie year? He's going to be trash. He's going to be killed out there. Look at Cam Ward in Tennessee. He's getting killed. So it makes no sense to me when I hear these Raiders fans say, take a quarterback, take a quarterback. Sure, there's some good quarterbacks this year, and maybe it works out for the Raiders if they take one of those guys. But they have way too many issues to throw out a young quarterback out there and expect him to fix all their issues. They have way too many. Bit of a side tangent. Just want to get that off my chest because it kind of threw me off a little bit. I was like, Raiders fans, what are we thinking here? Why do we need a quarterback right now? We are a bad football team that is probably 2 or 3 years away from even becoming a playoff threat. You think Fernando Mendoza or Dante Moore are going to fix all your issues? They're not. Cam Ward hasn't fixed the Tennessee Titans. Trevor Lawrence did not fix the Jacksonville Jaguars. Hell, Trevor Lawrence is still not that great. Bryce Young didn't save the Carolina Panthers. Caleb Williams did not save the Chicago Bears. It took them time to build those rosters, and I think Las Vegas needs to spend a year building their roster. Side tangent over. Anyways, back to this. They're not contending this year. Even if they draft a quarterback, they're not going to be there next year. I don't think they're the year 2027. I think maybe what their progress could be is this year probably taking a top 10 pick, next year probably being around a top 12 or 13 pick. And then I think this is the year where maybe they start to make a playoff, like a wild card push. And then 2028, maybe you make the playoffs. And then 2029 is when Raiders are back to potentially being a really good football team, right? Raiders fans may not like it, but this team sucks and they need a lot of work, and they're probably going to need a new head coach too. So I'm going to say 2029. All right, the Washington Commanders, man, it's crazy what's going on with this team this year. And by the way, I love the fight they showed this past week against the Denver Broncos. Like, Washington kind of felt like a team that was just kind of, I don't know, flailing around for a little bit. And then they go out there and they have a really tough, gritty game against the Denver Broncos, a game in which they freaking almost won. You know, if I was a Commanders fan, I would have been really proud of that football team in that moment. That all said, they're an older roster, like a really old roster that's going to have a lot of turnover these next few seasons. I will say, I think Dan Quinn's a good coach. I think you have an excellent quarterback in Jaden Daniels. So that prevents me from being way down here. But realistically speaking, I think it's probably going to be about 2027 when this team can maybe get back to being contenders. The biggest thing is just, can Jaden Daniels stay healthy? That's the biggest thing. But I think they need to nail the offseason this year and then nail the offseason heading into 2027. And then maybe they make the playoffs next year, or maybe they don't. And then next year, the year after that, I think that's kind of where you can expect Washington to get back to where they were in 2024. So I'll say 2027 for the Commanders. All right, Arizona, obviously it's not going to be this year. I think Kyler Murray's probably off the team after this year, and I think this team is talented. Like, I actually really like this roster. I think the big issue for this team is they're probably going to need a new head coach. I don't know if Gannon's going to be the guy, and they're going to need a new quarterback because Kyler's not the guy either. So my expectation is that they either draft a quarterback this year, a Simpson, a Mendoza, a Dante Moore, one of those three, and they're a good football team next year, but maybe not great. But I think 2027 and 2028, you might be able to see Arizona actually get there because they are a talented football team that has some pieces to really work with. I'm going to say 2028 just to kind of play it safe. I think next year in 2026, they either draft a quarterback or they just run it back with Jacoby Brissett for a year, and then in 2027 they draft a quarterback, and then maybe that gets them into contention the following season, maybe. Or they draft a young quarterback, you let him develop, maybe sit behind Brissett for that first year, so this year's kind of a throw it away year. 2027, the young quarterback takes over fully. I'm not expecting a Drake May year 2 from the rookie quarterback, so he needs a year to continue to get better, get some reps under his belt. They win a few more games, and then in 2028 they make the playoffs, and you know, I think loose contenders, maybe like dark horses or something like that. So I'll say 2028. Pittsburgh, man, this team just feels like, can I just put like cursed at this point? Can I just put like cursed? I feel like I should have made a cursed category because the team is talented. The team has pieces, but I don't know if they're ever really going to be contenders with this group of guys they have on the roster. I don't think they're going to be there this year. I don't know what their quarterback's going to be next year. Will it be Kyler? Will it be a rookie? Will it be Rodgers again? I don't think they're going to be contenders next year because I never thought they were contenders this year. Even when they were playing good football, I still don't think they are. I don't think they'll be there next year. And then who's going to be the long-term quarterback? I mean, I don't really know where to put Pittsburgh right now because they have an older kind of win now roster, but they're not, that win now roster is not good enough to win it all now. And then in addition to that, you have this massive question at quarterback. So, and Mike Tomlin, I don't know what his plans are in the future. So I'm going to put them in 2028, just kind of throwing it out there. I guess what I could see, Rodgers retires. He goes away. They maybe bring in Kyler or they draft a quarterback. We'll say they draft a quarterback because I think maybe like a Simpson, Moore, or Mendoza could fall to their pick. Let's say they draft a quarterback, right? So next year, they're going to have the rookie quarterback playing. The team is good enough for that rookie to have some success, but realistically, probably not a ton. Maybe they make the playoffs, wild card. Then I think some guys start to move away in 2027. Some guys get older, some players retire. You see some roster turnover. I'll say 2028 is kind of when you can expect this team to fill in some holes, get a little bit better. The quarterback's now entering into year 3. That's when Pittsburgh maybe can get there. Maybe, we'll see. All right, Buffalo, I guess they're contenders this year. I think they can win it all this year. The AFC is so open that Buffalo has a legit chance. Atlanta, holy moly, where do I start with this team? Obviously not this year. I don't think it'll be next year because who knows what's going to happen at quarterback and at head coach. I don't know if it's 2027 either. The thing is, like, I don't know what their thought process is now with Michael Penix Jr. I don't know, right? And they have that Kirk Cousins deal, I think, till, what, 2028, I want to say? So they're kind of handicapped in some ways. They don't have a ton of money. They don't even have a first round pick this year, so obviously they're not going to be great next year. Even if a head coach steps in and helps Michael Penix turn it around and start to play like the first round pick he was drafted to be, then like maybe we could see around here. I don't know, man. I kind of feel like I have to put them in like 2029 because I think they're going to have to make a decision with Penix probably after next year. I think they're going to give Penix one more year. I think they're going to fire their head coach, give Penix a new head coach. You know, I don't know what to expect. Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, maybe it's inconsistent, but it's not going to be enough to win a championship, right? And then the following year, sure, they could add a few pieces. They can get a bit better, but are they going to win a title? Probably not. Could they make the wild card? Maybe. So I think it's really between these 2 years when maybe you could start to expect it. I'll play it safe though. I think Arizona is a better football team, right? Outside of quarterback. So that's why I have Arizona in front. Same with Pittsburgh and even the New York Giants. I'll put them here. You know, these are in no particular order, but they're kind of like in the middle right here. I'll put them right here. Seattle is contending this year. They're going to be contending for quite a long while. I don't know if they're going to win it, but they have a chance. New England, they're in it. They're going to win a title probably eventually with Drake May and Mike Vrabel. That feels like I don't want to say it's an inevitability because nothing is inevitable in the NFL, but if there is one, the Patriots winning a championship with Drake May and Mike Vrabel kind of feels like it could be a bit of an inevitable one. Boy, Cleveland. Oh my days. Cursed? I should have put a cursed one in here. Not this year. Probably not next year. I don't think it'll be 2027 either. The thing is with Cleveland is there's two paths they could go down, right? They could hypothetically draft a quarterback this year, right? Simpson, Moore, Mendoza, and then those guys start next year, and the offense probably takes a small step forward. Or they rock it out with Shador and Dylan Gabriel next year. It's probably not great enough, not good enough to win a championship or even make the playoffs, right? But they'll make some improvements, right? They have 2 first-round picks. Maybe they take a tackle and a receiver, something like that. 2027, they draft a quarterback, right? And maybe they add some pieces to the offense. Maybe as early as 2028, they start becoming a good football team. And maybe 2029. But here's the other issue too. If you sit around and wait for 2027 to get a quarterback, by the time you get to that year and this year, Myles Garrett is getting older. The entire roster, all those pieces that are in their prime right now are getting older. And sure, you have Quinshawn, you have Mason Graham. You know, you're going to have some young weapons this offseason. Like there's the chance, I'll say 2029. I don't know what plan they're going to go down. Even if it is draft a quarterback this year, I think that offense is still a couple years away. I'll say this. I'll kind of give you 2 scenarios. If Cleveland drafts a quarterback this year, I think they can improve their window to maybe be around 2028. But if they want to go for a higher upside pick in 2027, I'll say 2029. So that's what I'll go there. All right, next up, the Houston Texans. Obviously, more than likely, probably not contending this year. I just think this offensive line is not good enough to win a title this year. That all said, if they rework that offensive line and CJ returns back to form, I think 2026 is probably when you can start to expect it a little bit. And by the way, I think CJ is a really good quarterback. I think he just needs some help on that offensive line. And if they invest in the offensive line like I think and hope they will, then give me Houston to be right back into the mix of things in 2026. So give me Houston in 2026. All right, Kansas City, they may not be there this year. I don't think they're going to win it at all this year. But next year, sure, Reed might retire. We'll have to wait and see on that one. Kelsey might retire too, which could push it more down like 2027 again, just to, you know, kind of give them a buffer. But it's Kansas City. Even if they make the playoffs this year, they have a chance. I don't think they will win it. I'll give it them probably next year. All right, the Dallas Cowboys. Look, it's going to be a tight window for them to get into a title position right now. I know they're playing so well. They just beat the Chiefs and the Eagles. Realistically speaking, I don't think it's going to be this year. But next year, I think we need to have some conversations about the Dallas Cowboys. I think they'll retain George Pickens. I think they're going to bring back essentially the exact same roster as this year. Plus, you have 2 first-round picks in which you can probably add maybe some corner help, maybe an edge, maybe a linebacker, maybe even a right tackle with how the defense has taken such a big step forward, a safety as well. I think Dallas will fix some of their last remaining issues. And next year, man, they could be really good. Hell, they might even be good enough this year to make a run at it, but I think it might be a little too late. I'll put them in there for next year, though. Chargers, I don't think they're going to be there this year. I think maybe next year you can start to have the conversation. Their biggest issue is just health in that offensive line. You stay healthy, Amari Hampton returns, the defense takes a step forward, the Chargers will be right in the thick of things. But, of course, until then, we gotta wait. The Jets, all right, obviously it's not this year. Obviously it's not gonna be next year. I don't think they're even gonna draft a quarterback this year. I think they're gonna wait till 2027. So that makes it the earliest 2027. Realistically speaking, I think they're gonna draft a quarterback here. And then I think 2028, they're gonna win some more games. I think 2029, they're going to be maybe a wild card level team. And maybe 2030, they could get there. I'll say 2029 because I think the offense has a lot of talented pieces already on it. They're going to have to rework that defense, and they're going to have to hit on quarterback. But if they can do so, the Jets could be good. They could be a pretty good team in the future. All right, Carolina, man. This team feels so weird, man. They're winning games, but man, it doesn't feel like it. They're not going to win a championship this year. I have a really tough time seeing them being in contention next year. 2027 even feels like a bit of a reach for me, but I think with how this defense is improving, and if they could just get Bryce to play a little bit better and more consistent, then I think maybe 2027 is probably when we can start having some conversations about Carolina and potentially getting there. They're in the hunt this year. Next year, hopefully they make the wild card. Then in 2027, they start to put the pieces together and make that run. Tennessee, I'm going to put them in 2030. I mean, yeah, you have your quarterback, you think. What else do you have? Shamir DK, Alec Ayomaner, Devondre Sweat, Jeffrey Simmons by 2028, 2029. Who knows what he's going to look like? A lot of things have to improve on Tennessee. They're all the way down in 2030. I could even make the argument for after 2030. But because they have their quarterback, I'll say 2030. All right, Indianapolis, look, with the way their season is currently projecting right now, they're on a bit of a tailspin right now. And with Daniel Jones' injury, it just kind of feels like they can't contend this year, which maybe brings me to next year when they can get back to full strength. But they don't even have a first-round pick. It's funny how the conversation has sort of changed on Indianapolis. Because of how open the AFC is, if they can return to form, I'll say the Colts still have a chance. But I think it's somewhere between these two. I'll put the Colts here, though. And then Jacksonville, they'll make the playoffs this year, a wild card spot, but they are such a weird football team. They just are so weird. They're not going to win a championship this year. I don't see them winning it next year either. I think they're going to be, again, kind of in the same spot, maybe make the playoffs first or second round out. I think 2027 is when you can start to see Jacksonville put the pieces together. I think this is about when you could see it. But all right, guys, this is our tier list. Let me know in the comment section below, what team do you agree with? What team do you disagree with? And if you enjoyed, make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe button. We're on the road to 20,000 subscribers, so hit that subscribe button. And of course, I love you guys. Peace.